Now, some years ago, I was involved in a television show with a good friend, Julie Friday, who made a documentary film called The Truth Is Not Out There. I think it was called that. And it's about the subject of UFOs. And this is going back some time. So, please forgive me for the video. Might not be absolutely superb. It was well before the days of 4K was around. And it's also a bit quirky, to say the least. So I'm going to let's have a look through this video and see what we think. But there are some interesting things that I did cover. And again, apologies.
Manchester's a great city, but do we really know what goes on in the skies above us? According to Steve Mera from Manchester's Association of Paranormal Investigation and Training, Manchester is a UFO hotspot. We took to the streets to find out who's seen one.
Now, I didn't actually say it's a hotspot. I said, look, there are UFOs that are seen throughout Manchester, of course, like any other town or city in the UK. Doesn't make it a hotspot, of course. I think we've had our equal share, just as any other place has. And of course, some incidents around Manchester International Airport, just as there are many other airports and apparently reported things occasionally. So, but nevertheless, I wouldn't say it's a hotspot.
Can you tell me, do you believe in UFOs?
No, I don't.
I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be.
I don't believe in it. I'm just too practical.
They definitely exist. It's like there's that much space out there, how can they not?
Just the evidence the Americans have that I believe in them. What he's forgotten to tell you is that he's been abducted twice.
Where did he find these people from? Did he pick out the quirkiest people and go, he's the guy we've got to talk to?
It seems for every one believer, there are 10 disbelievers.
So if I said to you that Manchester's a bit of a hotspot for UFOs, what do you think about that?
I'd probably believe it, wouldn't surprise me.
Is it?
I did not know that.
Me neither.
I'm not quite sure. I think I'd be very shocked, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
Well, can you ask them to zap me up because I've got too many bills at the minute. But yeah, I do believe there's something out there.
I must admit, I'm a bit of a skeptic myself. Why would UFOs come to Manchester anyway? Would we see one docking alongside Beetham Tower for the night? Would the occupants nip into Forbidden Planet for a magazine? Or pop down to Fab Cafe for a beer?
Well, I can say they're not going to pop in for a beer, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, in fact, I'd probably stay well away from Manchester if there was anybody travelling here. Manchester was one of the last places you'd want to be.
I don't know for sure, but I know a man who might. I went to meet ufologist Steve Mera in Fab Cafe to find out more about UFOs and what's happening around Manchester.
I was around about 7 or 8 years old when I saw my first UFO. I didn't know what a UFO was, of course, at that time. I saw something in the sky when I was playing in the back garden. It hovered in the sky for about 4 or 5 minutes. I called my mother out, she saw it. We did actually report it to the press at the time as well, and the reporter did come out. And it had been sighted by a number of people, and that's whilst I was living in Timperley, in Cheshire. And since then, I've had pretty much an interest in the subject.
Wow, special effects. No expense spared here, guys.
Steve's had a lot of experience of UFO sightings. He's investigated them all over the country, and he thinks Manchester is a particularly interesting place to look for them.
In 27 years of investigating the subject of aerial phenomena, I can probably say I've seen around about a couple of hundred, probably at least. strange things in the sky. And that can be from something I've seen at night, which looks to be a satellite moving, then suddenly stop. You know, remember we are told satellites don't stop in flight. And I have seen something like that, so that classifies an unidentified object. I've also seen things on the sunniest of days as well, different strange-looking aircraft, you know, which don't seem to have wing appendages, engines, or even make a sound. So, yeah, I'd say around about a couple of hundred since in 27 years of investigating, anyway.
Shagam Lee French, based in Manchester, is a writer with some experience of researching UFOs in Moss Side.
I think UFOs are a very interesting phenomenon as regards the mythology and how people need myths to give them meaning in life. I think it's quite possible that they exist. I'm kind of a healthy skeptic.
You know, missing a tooth and from Moss Side. If anybody knows what Manchester's like, what a mix.
Because if UFOs exist, then it's wonderful. It's an exciting story. If they don't exist, life takes a bit of the interest, the adventure out of life. So I hope they do exist, but the skeptic in me has to say it's probable that they don't.
UFOs always will exist. They're an unidentified flying object, for crying out loud. You know, the Daleks. The Daleks are here.
But, as I said before, not everyone is convinced. The Manchester Skeptics Society meet monthly in TV21.
Manchester Skeptics Society, what a great team of people they are.
They have so much northern common sense and regularly pour scorn on the paranormal and the unexplained. Alice Shepherd, who writes the blog Alice in Galaxyland...
Sorry? Alex in Galaxyland? Oh, dear.
...has her own theories about UFOs. What's your reaction when you hear about sightings in the press and in the media?
Then I think what was really going on, what aerial activity was taking place, what were the aeroplanes and satellites doing, and generally I don't pay all that much attention, to be honest. I'd far rather learn about spectral lines or about the inner workings of a star and nuclear synthesis.
Wow. I'm lost for words.
I think there's quite a few reasons. I expect some are possibly shooting stars, some might be aeroplanes. There's an awful lot of satellites, hundreds of thousands of them in the sky, and they move on at quite a steady speed, just a dot of light moving across your vision. And there's no sound associated with them, they're out of the atmosphere, so it's quite ghostly. And there's also Chinese lanterns and weather balloons.
I met up with Rick Owen and Gavin Schofield, who both agree with Alice's definition of UFOs.
I mean, a UFO just means you can't identify the object, of course. So, yeah, I've certainly seen things that I couldn't tell you exactly what they were. Typically, I think it's quite obvious that what they're looking at is some kind of perfectly explicable thing, usually a Chinese lantern.
All right, you dive bomb now. Yeah, the Chinese lanterns. Yeah, all that, of course, yeah.
You know, I think any leaping to conclusions about, you know, which planet they're visiting us from is unwarranted.
Gavin tells us more.
UFO is an unidentified flying object, of course. There's definitely things in the sky and we have no idea what they are. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're aliens. It's wrong to jump to conclusions.
The official definition of a UFO is simply an unidentified flying object, no more, no less. That could be a bird, a plane, a balloon. It could be anything in the sky that you can't readily identify.
So why do the public think UFOs and aliens go hand in hand?
It's alien, 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 alien.
Alien, 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 alien.
UFO, UFO, UFO. I mean, the two words are put together so often that they can't help but be linked in the mindset.
UFOs have been longly associated to the belief of alien visitations or aliens coming to planet Earth. A lot of it has come from the 1950s B movies, which we all loved probably as children, such as Aliens and Invasion of Planet Earth and things like that. And they did tend to show the typical flying saucer and aliens within them. People made that connection at a very early age, that aliens equals flying objects, strange UFOs. That's not always the case. Some of the things that the Ministry of Defence and other military establishments are flying now.
Ooh, flying saucer sweets. Do you remember them? Used to melt in your mouth, but ooh, tasted awful.
Are unrecognisable. They have unmanned aerial vehicles that don't look like anything like aircraft, and they have circular objects. That they have things that can hover. To simply somebody to see them in occasionally, they just say it's a UFO. But to others, it would be simply that it's just an exotic aircraft. But the connection between aliens and UFOs is not a hard one with me. I don't believe there's enough evidence to support the fact that aliens are visiting planet Earth. But I definitely think there's enough evidence to support the fact that UFOs exist, unidentified flying objects, and strange craft, because they're certainly seen.
You can't say that UFO is an alien spaceship because it's no longer identified. I don't think you'll find many skeptics who believe in alien spaceships and abductions.
Well, that I actually agree with, yeah. Skeptic Societies is not the place you go to ask about this type of stuff.
Leo Okori is a UFO enthusiast, and he adds his point of view to the discussions.
Yeah, I believe they're real. I think a lot of people misinterpret what the actual term UFO means. Unidentified flying object, which could cover a whole range of things. Being military jet that have not been seen by the public yet, or passenger jets that have not been seen yet, that have been test flown. I think people seem to all quickly think of, UFO means low green men, but whether it is or not, I don't know.
Well said, Leo.
The skeptics have strong opinions about the government and UFO conspiracies and cover-ups.
Now, why would they bother? I expect some of them would be screaming their heads off about it. It would be a great excuse for more bombs and so on.
What?
Do you think that the government's trying to drip feed information into society about UFOs to prepare us for the eventuality?
How the hell would they do that? And why would they do that?
Because they've been doing it for years.
Quite easily, but they could be covering up anything without evidence. They don't like to believe in something. They could be covering up unicorn sightings and...
Did he just say unicorn sightings?
I would be none the wiser. I still wouldn't believe in it.
So everyone seems to be agreed. A UFO is nothing more than that, an object that can't be identified. Join us in part 2 for the good, the bad and the ugly UFO hoaxes. In many ways, the skeptics' views seem to be borne out by Steve's own research into UFO sightings around Manchester. Steve often gets sent hoaxes. Some of them are very easy to spot, and many of them are just everyday objects. However, with more and more advanced technology, hoaxes are becoming more sophisticated, as Steve explains.
We've had quite a number of fakes and hoaxes over the years. More so now, it tends to be more video and photographic fakes, because it's a constant battle, to tell you the truth, between our analysts and the equipment and software we use against those that hoax it. There's a software battle actually going on, and we can't accept video and photographs as concrete proof anymore. There was a time when it was, we could do, because we didn't have the technology to manufacture such hoaxes, but now we do, and they're readily easy to obtain over the internet. So now it's very, very difficult. But there's been a number of hoaxes which have actually almost caught us out in the past, and some very good ones. There was a gentleman who was in Knutsford who reported a landed UFO to us.
From that Star Trek model?
A number of years ago, and we visited the location. We took interviews from several people who claimed to have seen the object land in a nearby field. On an inspection of the field, we could clearly see that there was markings on the ground, which led to the theory that heat had been applied to the ground.
Well, that's a crop circle. I mean...
coupled with numerous other reported incidences from that location over the years, we were almost, coming to the conclusion that it could have been something strange. And it was only afterwards, about a week or two after the case had been shelved, that we found that the gentleman had actually manufactured the whole incident in a reason for actually he was writing a book on the subject, and it was one of our researchers that found that information, and a lot of things came to light, such as the manufacturing of he actually burnt the area on the ground himself, the witnesses he knew, and he concocted a very good story. He did have us almost fooled, but our investigators are very vigilant, and they're very thorough in the research and investigation, and we do background checks on the people that do report them as well, which is a necessary thing to do now. This particular photograph was sent in by a friend of mine. The photos were passed on to him. There were 2 photographs in succession, and the first one you can see, they're both taken on a clear sunny day, more or less. There's slightly a little bit of cloud around. This particular object, which caught his eye, the sunlight reflection maybe on it, and of course again on the second one. Now this was a big giveaway for us, because it was what we refer to as duplexing, and that method is caught by camera shake. It's a single object which is obviously light, but because there is camera shake, it seems to duplicate, so there looks to be more than 2 objects, or you can have even a succession of 3, 4 and 5. There is a very faint tail as well. On the second photograph, it gives it away even more so. It looks to be a cylindrical object with a tail. Now most people, these are very similar to the 1950s photographs that were taken in black and white, and lots of people claim that they were flying discs or cigar-shaped objects. It is in fact an aircraft, a civilian aircraft. And because of its acute angle in reflection to the sunlight bouncing off it, you can't see its tail and you can't see its wings. But nevertheless, though, you can see its contrail behind. Big giveaway. That's actually an aircraft. It's an identified flying object, an IFO. This particular video, which was sent to us a couple of years ago, is regarding a UFO that was flying over Salford, Manchester. It travelled all the way through to Southport and beyond. Travelled around about 7,000 miles. Turned out to be nothing more than this. It was a triangular solar balloon. The 2 gentlemen that released it put a little tether on the end of it with a little sticker saying, "Let us know how far this travels." Travels over 7,000 miles. These things are videoed regularly, and you can purchase them quite cheaply. This particular video had our investigators running around for quite some time, and as you can see, it was taken over Manchester town centre and depicting a triangular object in the sky. Very good definition, and you can work out even from the signpost exactly where it is in Manchester. What we waited for was public response, and in this case we didn't get any. And what was unusual is that we normally would have had hundreds, you would think hundreds of people would have reported this thing. In fact, we didn't have any, which led us to believe that the object wasn't even really there. This is in fact a video hoax, which was produced by students from Manchester University as a project. Well done to them. Another lot of photographs that were sent to us only last year. These particular photographs were photoed in Urmston and Flixton, Manchester. And on one particular evening, we had around about 15 different witnesses that reported strange orange balls of light in the sky. What was interesting is with the photographs, when we looked at them, they do look quite interesting. And I had to admit, yes, there was something strange about them. They didn't have to have any aircraft recognition lighting. There was no sound at the time reported, and they all kind of traversed through the sky in the same direction. The unfortunate thing is that we had a gentleman who photographed and videoed the same things with a professional film camera, and you can see what these actually were. You can see that these are fire lanterns. They're easily accessible. You can buy them for literally 50p or £1 in most shops now, and there's certainly no restrictions on the launching and the safety protocols that are involved in regarding these particular things. The problem for us is that most people's digital cameras, when filming and photographing such things, turn out to pretty much looking like this. And it's only when we actually use a professional camera that we get something significantly different. And we knew straight away that the objects were in fact fire lanterns, and we released a load of information to let people know, and the general public, that that's what they were actually seeing. A few of them were still convinced, though, nevertheless, that they had seen something extraterrestrial in origin.
Steve has some advice for any aspiring ufologists.
The first thing is to take into consideration the time of when you're actually looking at this, the direction of where the sun is at that time, other people around that you might be able to draw their attention to it. It's always great to have another witness and their perception of what they've seen. To make notes as quickly as possible, really, because you do forget things very quickly, the little details. If you've got a video camera, always tripod it. Don't have it on automatic focus. And talk. People film, but they don't talk about what they're seeing. You know, they might just film an object, but they're not saying anything. And it's important to sort of get your words over as well as to what you're actually seeing. And take photographs, as many as you possibly can, for the whole duration of the incident. What shouldn't they do is probably panic. People do panic sometimes. I don't know why. There's nothing really to be worried about. People do see strange things in the sky occasionally, and it's a matter of keeping a level head. Try and draw other people to the same thing if somebody's nearby.
As long as there are hoaxes about, the skeptics will never be convinced.
I think I'd want to hear quite a lot of scientists reporting that there was definitely some unexplained activity going on, but I'm not sure that just a few lights in the sky would convince me.
Hello, we do have scientists, plenty of them that have come forward, talked about unidentified flying objects.
I think there are ways to detect what's going on in the orbit of the Earth, and we're getting better and better at detecting asteroids and so on.
The controversial question is, what's the explanation of the origin of those things?
Well, okay then, what will convince you that they'd come from another planet?
Well, for that, you know, we'd be looking at real evidence of an alien presence, some kind of contact or, you know, physical evidence that something had arrived that couldn't be explained by any earthly means. You'd have to eliminate any earthly explanation.
It depends whether you mean UFO or alien spaceship. UFO, if there was a light in the sky, no one knew what it was, it's definitely a UFO, unidentified, but alien spaceship, some sort of proof that it was aliens, like maybe a message, radio message, or...
Radio messages? Radio signals? Well, it's debatable if we may have actually received already some of them. Some question marks over the years. But hey.
Very detailed pictures showing something like out of a sci-fi program, but without something to identify it as this or that, it's still a UFO and it's unidentified.
I know two people who say they've seen UFOs, and unfortunately I don't know if they were on medication at the time. The problem is, I mean, I have one friend who's a really big conspiracy theorist, and he's one of the people who's seen UFOs, and he has a whole theory about the mothership and black aliens, and how every famous person since, I don't know, the Egyptian pharaohs has been influenced by these alien cultures warring each other, and there's some grey ones, and there's some black ones, and there's some green ones. And I love it. It's great. It sounds like great fun.
Sometimes it's not just what's seen, as well as what's heard, that causes great excitement. Steve takes up the story of a radio signal that caused a stir.
The SETI Institute is a number of telescopes, radio telescopes, featured all around the planet in different countries. And a few years ago, the Australians, a news company, released some information regarding a strange signal that they did found. And apparently it was a periodic signal around about 5:15 in the evening, and they'd get it for about, probably only a minute or two, and then it would disappear. And it caused really big news over there, and of course, because it was periodic, they thought anything periodic usually, should I say, it has some intelligence behind it. So they thought, great, fantastic. At that time of the day, they tuned into it. And it took only about 3 or 4 days for them to realise what in fact they were picking up was the microwave oven from downstairs. Because around about 5:15, a certain amount of the people working there would take a break, go down to the kitchen, put a pie in the microwave and switch it on. And in fact, that signal, that microwave signal, was being leaked, and it was that we were actually picking up on. So unfortunately, it crushed a lot of people's ideas that it was actually intelligent communication and was going to come to Australia first.
If UFOs are just unidentified flying objects, why do the public constantly report sightings? Join us in part 3 to discover the real Manchester UFOs. Despite all the skeptics, the rumours and intrigue still exists. Leo tells of his fascination with his first experience of UFOs.
There was one case, and I'll never forget this. It was back when I was a teenager. And basically what had happened was like mid-90s, 95, and I remember being at home watching TV and there's a news break. I think the reporter at the time, if I'm right, I'm not 100% sure, it might have been Trevor McDonald, I'm not 100% sure, but basically there's a news break, an ITN news break, and a UFO has been spotted flying over Manchester Airport and came into interaction with one of the passenger jets as it was coming into land. And they did an interview straight after, like pretty much interviewing passengers what they saw. Passengers said they saw this, pilots said they saw that. You know, they all claimed to have seen something, and something definitely came into contact with the plane. The plane landing, you had all these startled passengers, like, what just happened, what just happened? So once that happened, I was just like, whoa, whoa, you know, UFO, UFO, UFO. And then I waited again to see the next news. So I called my friends. I was like, you got to watch the news at 9 o'clock. You know, 9 o'clock BBC News will be on there. It has to be on the news. No. There was nothing. I was like, well, maybe it's going to be the next day. Was there anything on? No, nothing. So that to me made me start to think also, why all doesn't this media blackout? That was one of the main things that sparked me trying to find information myself, because the information you wanted wasn't there. You know, they just, I started to notice how certain things were being held back, and if you did want the truth, you really had to search for it yourself.
In fact, what Leo describes is one of the most enduring and intriguing sightings ever. It centres on a British Airways 737 travelling over Cumbria towards Manchester Airport. Steve takes up the story.
Over the years there have been a number of significant UFO incidents in Manchester. The main one that comes to mind, which most people will probably recount, was the Manchester near air miss of an airplane coming into land at Manchester in January of 1995. Mark Stewart, the first officer and captain, literally ducked as this unusual Christmas tree shaped coloured object shot down the right side of their aircraft, and they reported it officially to the British Airways, and an official report was made. The National Aeronautics and the Civil Aviation Authority did a 12-month investigation as to what that object could have been. What was unusual is that the pilots, which had quite a number of years of experience flying aircraft, that they noted there was no wake. When similar boats passing on an ocean, when you pass another one, a wake is felt, just as air movement is by two aircraft passing each other, and they didn't report any wake whatsoever. After 12 months investigation by the Civil Aviation Authority, they could find no explanation what this object was, or nor why it was not picked up on radar. So it was left as an unidentified flying object.
Rick Owen is not impressed by the Manchester Airport sighting.
Well, pilots aren't superhuman. Like anybody, they can be prone to seeing things, and they can misinterpret things. So, like anybody, they can see something they can't immediately explain. And, well, some pilots will say, I'm not sure what that was, and others will jump to wild conclusions, just like any other person.
But they both saw it, and they both agreed that it was a UFO.
Yeah, they both agree that they can't immediately identify what it was.
I have no problems with it. They saw something they couldn't identify. I'd need a bit more information to have a guess of what it is, if you get what I mean. You see something and you don't know what it is, it doesn't mean it's X or Y, it could be anything. It could be a secret spy plane, it could be like an alien spaceship, it could be some weird astronomy event. You never know, do you?
scientists are interested in observing space for signs of extraterrestrial life. Steve and Alice explain the function of the SETI Institute.
The function of the SETI Institute was built on the back of a gentleman called Frank Drake, who founded the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and he believed that we could receive a signal from an intelligent life form out in space, and that if we could receive it, we could prove that that alien life is out there and is in fact intelligent, and therefore has been running since.
Because they're looking across the galaxy and across the universe, they're not confining it to our skies and what have turned out to be Chinese lanterns. They're doing something much deeper and much more scientific than that.
Strange things in the sky have not only been seen, but heard, like the so-called WOW signal.
Oh, I'm very familiar with the WOW signal. I mean, they called it WOW signal because the person who was listening to it at the time just actually wrote out WOW on the page, and hence its name, the WOW signal, and it's kind of stuck ever since. If you talk to anybody on the high street about the SETI incident, they'll probably say, "Oh yeah, the WOW signal," But further research has been carried out since then, and a lot of it points to, and astronomers may say the same thing, that it could have been, in fact, a supernova or some type of dark star that they were actually picking a signal up on. Sometimes the death of a star can give off similar emissions in space, presumably that it's a timed information coming back. And unfortunately, when they go back to look again and it's not there, it could simply have been that star just died now. It was a unique incident, and we will never know for 100% for sure if it was something extraterrestrial in origin or there was a more mundane astronomical reason behind it.
To think that we're all alone up here, it's a pretty lonely place, and all the space that's around us. You'd think you'd be pretty sad as well. So I think there's some special things out there, So I don't think there's much that could convince me otherwise now, to be honest. I just think whether there's aliens here or whether the aliens are a million trillion miles away, just knowing that maybe there's something out there that probably trying to do the same thing and as curious as we are, that'd be a nice thing to know.
We got Cybermen.
And other UFOs have been spotted in the area, notably the so-called Carrington Triangle.
There's a particular number of areas throughout Manchester that have, over the years, had more reported UFO incidents than other places.
Well, that image is not a Carrington, it's Jodrell Bank.
One of which is the Carrington location, where there seems to be more reported incidents over the years. The only thing I can really put it down to is that there are a number of facilities in that area, such as a Shell refinery, which is very well illuminated at night. It is, and other people's opinions, that sometimes UFOs are attracted to certain facilities, be it military, be it civilian airports, be it chemical factories or Shell refineries, even nuclear facilities as well. So there is that possibility that could be the reason. Or simply that, because it gets more recognition in that area, that people are more aware. So it's very difficult to actually put your finger on it and say for the reasons why, but you can certainly pick out certain areas where there does seem to be a heightened amount of reported incidents there.
Steve has been baffled by a couple of other UFO incidents in Manchester Central and Eccles. He takes up their stories.
A particular photograph that was filmed over Manchester Central. There was about 8 or 9 photographs that were sent, and they were all very similar in the same part of the sky. In fact, this particular object hung around in the sky for a good round about 15 minutes, and didn't really move very far. It just moved very slightly left or right and up and down, but it generally stayed in the same part of the sky. So it was perfect for the people to be able to take a reasonable amount of photographs. In this case, there were no noise, there were no wing appendages, there was no engine, no tail, no sign of anything that we could recognise as a known aircraft. In fact, it stayed in the sky for 15 minutes before it disappeared, and it just blinked out, like turning a light bulb on and off. We have no idea what this is. This is an unidentified flying object.
The main characteristics of a UFO can be identified by unusual aircraft lighting, strange movements and sometimes incredible speeds, hovering, morphing or duplicating shapes, little or no sound, and sometimes buzzing, static, humming noises. There's no wake behind a UFO. There's usually no radar confirmation. Rarely there are unusual odours like sulphur. Extremely rarely there is peculiar evidence left behind, such as falling of angel hair, a web fibre type substance seen floating to the ground. Some sightings just can't be confirmed, and they become urban legends.
I spent quite a long time investigating UFOs and aliens in Moss Side around 2001, 2002. And I don't know when the Moss Side UFO landing happened, but I missed it completely. I was quite fascinated to hear about that.
I do remember the incident quite well. There was a lot of rumours. I first got told through a friend of mine, and by the time I'd actually jumped on it and tried to find out what exactly had happened, there was numerous other stories in the pipeline. I was listening from people saying that there had been an underground gas explosion. I was also being told that a meteor had come down and hit the ground and caused an impact site. Also that the police were involved, and there were lots and lots of different information. And the problem was trying to pull it all away and trying to find out exactly what went on. And unfortunately, I never actually got to the core information as to where did this story originate, how did it originate, and what was the reason behind it that people thought that was actually an alien had landed there. I never found enough evidence to support the fact, and it kind of disappeared very quickly as it arrived on my desk. I don't actually know how it all came about, to tell you the truth, but I can certainly tell you there were a number of different stories that were circulating at that time throughout the area of Moss Side.
So where does science stand on the thorny subject of UFOs? Are governments still searching for them? Does anybody really care anymore? Join us in part 4 to find out more. In the past, sightings of UFOs have been logged by the government, but they've recently closed down the UFO hotline. Now, if you phone the UFO hotline, this is the response you'll get.
Please note that it is no longer MOD policy to record, respond to or investigate UFO sightings. Therefore, it is no longer possible to leave messages on this number. Further details are available on our website at www.mod.uk. Thank you.
Hi, this is the MOD here. We don't really care anymore. So, don't call us, we'll call you.
The UFO government hotline, should we say the Ministry of Defence Staff 2A, people were reporting frequently regarding UFO sightings. Not just the general public, but pilots, police officers and other members. Now it has been claimed that it's shut down. I don't think it's going to be a great loss to the Ministry of Defence. The Ministry of Defence certainly have their own agenda for releasing the amount of UFO data that they have done. They're actually falling in line with many of the other countries around the world on the official release of UFOs. New Zealand, Australia and many other countries are doing exactly the same thing. Some people will believe that it's actually just a matter of enlightening the public to an event that is taking place on a world scale. Some people believe it's a form of indoctrinating, a slow drip of information to lead the path for us to accept the fact that UFOs do really exist. Some people might just shrug their shoulders in the future and say, well, I already knew that. And that would be actually certainly helpful for them. In fact, the Ministry of Defence and military facilities have used the terminology of UFOs themselves, and it's certainly been helpful for them. I can understand military facilities flying exotic aircraft around. They certainly wouldn't be too bothered by the fact that somebody might have reported it as a UFO, because it takes the whole thing away from them being responsible for flying an exotic aircraft around.
Bottom line is that the Ministry of Defence just wanted transparency. We're never going to get it, because even my own files reported to the Ministry of Defence have never been released. Some of those that include police officers and things like that. They said they released them all, and then they thought, oh, by the way, we found a few more under the carpet. We're going to release them. Oh, yes, we're the good guys. It's transparency. We want everybody to know that. We're giving everybody everything we have. Utter rubbish.
Steve tells us he still gets many reportings of UFOs over Manchester.
We get a number of reported incidents each month, around about 60. In a month, but that is also it's very orientated with television and radio productions. When in fact when X-Files, the TV show, was on and airing, We had a huge influx. You know, we went from 60 a month to around about 300. And, you know, on most of those occasions, you know, we did identify a lot of the things as just, you know, people just not seeing what, getting misidentified objects and things like that. But it's all dependent. But normally around about 60 a month we receive.
Steve tells us when the last reported sighting was.
The last reported sighting of a UFO in Manchester was the day before yesterday, just a couple of days ago. I received a phone call about 11:15 at night, and of course they come directly through to my house because I have a 24-hour line, so I get phone calls at all times of hours. But that's because I'm geared to, if it's important, I'll get up and I'll go out. You know, I want to find out what these people are seeing. And it was around about 11:15 at night, and a gentleman said he was looking up at the moon, and he saw a number of black objects passing in front of the moon. And if you went out there now, I would see them probably myself. So, of course, I went out there, and I didn't see anything, unfortunately. I wanted to, but I didn't. But it's all down to perspective and his angle and where he was at that time. And it, you know, just from somebody reading around the corner, just for them pointing up in the sky can be in a completely different place for yourself. And I really don't know actually what this gentleman had seen, but nevertheless, though, it was reported as a UFO.
If you're wondering about the size of some UFOs and how fast they travel, Steve has some surprising information about the largest one seen over Manchester.
Estimating the size of a UFO is a common question that we're often asked, and it is relatively difficult initially for anybody who has no scale reference to estimate a size of something they're seeing in the sky. Because we're looking at the sky, we naturally look for things to estimate a size, such as anything in visual range, which we could use it as a size comparison. Most of the times, on a clear blue sky, it's next to impossible to estimate a size of a UFO. Lots of people can theorise, but we can't exactly put the finger on it and say this is the size. What we look for is when a UFO is being seen in the sky and somebody spots it and it's passing into a cloud or behind a cloud, the main thing for us, we will get a meteorological report for that day and find out the height of the cloud for that day. Therefore, we know straight away roughly what height this object was at. Then we work out, calculate from there its speed, how fast it transitioned across the sky and within that time basis. So we can work out a size and a speed comparison, and we can get an approximate size and speed, but not exactly it. But it's extremely difficult, and the more things in shot at the time a video is photographed or videoed, the better it is for us, because we definitely need something in the sky to give us some reference. The largest UFO size seen was a huge triangular object that was seen travelling from Sale right across through Manchester and on to North Yorkshire, and that was around about that was February of 1992. It was sighted by only about 16 or 17 people who witnessed or came forward saying that they claimed to have seen it, but they said that it was the size of a football field, and they were all definitely sure it was around that size. So I would say that's quite large.
Alice believes that UFOs don't exist.
I'm afraid I haven't, not once ever. I've certainly seen a few meteors, shooting stars, but I knew what they were. The first I ever saw was in Brighton, quite a bright one because Brighton is a brightly lit city.
Brighton, which is a bright city. Bright.
I was 24, it was wonderful, but I knew what it was. Way too fast for a spaceship.
Does the fact that science doesn't appear interested in UFOs mean we should give up the search for extraterrestrial life? There are scientists who believe that we aren't alone, like Sir Stephen Hawking and Frank Drake, who developed Drake's equation. They support the idea of life beyond Earth, as Steve explains.
Drake's equation, Frank Drake was the one that pioneered the SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and he came up with a formula, a mathematical formula, which was originally quite complicated, but when you actually look at it and kind of break it down, it's quite easy to understand. And it was in regards to how many intelligent life forms could be living out there on a planet similar to our own. And what he pretty much worked out is that he had to start with a number, and that number was the amount of stars in our galaxy, because each planet that survives, like our own, is dependent on a star. Remove that star, there's no life. And he worked out that a consistent amount of a million, say for an example, a million stars just in our galaxy alone. And then he worked out that a percentage of those would have planets. So he worked out a percentage, and say if he said 10% of that, out of those 10%, they would have 10% of those planets may have a life on it, such as would have to have water, for an example, because we pretty much realise that water is the fundamental of all things in life in space at the moment. Therefore, he did kind of ruled again a 10% again, and roughly worked out how many planets with life could sustain a life form. And then, again, a 10% of that would a life form with intelligence. And then 10% of then a life form with intelligence that would be able to communicate with us, a signal. And he pretty much worked out, after working this whole equation out, that there must be millions and millions of planets out there with intelligent life, with the capabilities of communicating with us here on Earth. Therefore, that's what the SETI Institute was based its foundation on, that it is very probable that we will get some signal at some stage.
But there are even sceptical comments about the reality of extraterrestrials based on Drake's equation.
No, of course. Drake's equation is an equation that tells you the estimated probability of there being intelligent life somewhere out in the galaxy. It doesn't tell us anything about whether that intelligent life is capable of crossing interstellar distances to visit us. It just tells us whether they're out there. Well, Stephen Hawking says that the mathematical probability is that there are aliens living in the universe, apart from other life forms apart from us. But he certainly doesn't claim that they're visiting us.
Leo, on the other hand, believes quite passionately that there is life beyond Earth, whether they have visited us yet or not.
I believe because I think someone once told me, I think it was a scientist mentioned that for every grain of sand there is on the planet, there's like 1 million stars or something, 1 billion stars, something, some crazy figure like that. So if you imagine that you took a handful of sand and you're holding it there, for every 1 grain of sand that's in your hand is 1 million stars. When you think about all the planets that could be going around each of those stars, I mean, how many planets around ours, whatever, you think we've got life okay in our solar system, but how many other solar systems are out there? And the chances are you've got millions upon millions, billions, trillions of solar systems. To think that there's only just us out there right now, I kind of think that'd be kind of ignorant to think. I don't say that we are special, I believe we're special, but I think it'd be a bit of a lonely place to think that there's anything else out there.
With so many conflicting views, the final word goes to Alice Shepherd.
I simply accept that I don't know the answer. It's quite peaceful, really, when you realise that you don't know, and the only way to know is to look as much as possible and find out. I think it would be great if there was alien life out there. I would really love to meet them. So I'm not going to say I don't believe in aliens, because I genuinely don't know.
Well, there you have it, guys. An old documentary. Some years ago, it was filmed, 2011, I think it was, and then earlier footage from 2009 and 2006 and things like that. So, yeah, interesting. Funny about people's viewpoints, isn't it? And when people are making these documentaries, they try and make it entertaining to a point, but really lacks many facts and details, and that's the problem that we faced with many years ago. Thank God some of the documentaries now are a lot better and have employed scientific, vigorous research into them and presented some very knowledgeable stuff. Thank heavens. So thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And we'll be back to you really soon. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Oh, and if you do have, unfortunately, any ideas, then put any comments down. We'll get back to you. Okay. Thank you.